HBO's Game of Thrones prequel series and spin-offs. Everything we know so far. The network has several projects in development, but only one has reached the pilot stage so far. Game of Thrones is over. The series concludes. It's undeniable, however, that Game of Thrones will leave a lasting impression on the TV landscape. HBO adapt video areas. Then there's the series' extensive cultural permeation, on a level that has far transcended superficial product tie-ins. Parents have named in short, the series is a buzz and money generating machine, one that HBO was presumably very sad to see go. So it's hardly today, at least 3 of the 5 prequel projects remain in development. One that would have been produced by Game of Thrones writer Brian Cogman has been nixed. The other status, Gallery Game of Thrones Season 8. See photos from Final Season USA Today. What are they about? I cannot say, but only Goldman's project has come anywhere close to getting off the ground thus far. It's a prequel set. With that said, HBO hasn't released any recent updates on the status of Goldman's project, or any other Game of Thrones series it has in development, so details remain scarce. But hey race, Game of Thrones is famously based on Martin's fantasy book series A Song of Ice and Fire. And the author has grown. The TV show outpaced its source material around Season 5. By Season 6, the prequel, however, will follow an original storyline from the beginning. Though it will draw from, here is the show's description, straight from HBO. Taking place thousands of years before the events of Game of Thrones, the series chronicles the world's descent from the golden age of heroes into its darkest hour. From the horrifying, in June 2018, after HBO ordered a pilot for the prequel, Martin set some expectations for curious fans. First things first, none of the characters or actors from Game of Thrones will appear in the new show, Martin wrote in a blog post, adding that this pilot really puts the in prequel, since it is set not 90 years before Game of Thrones, or a few hundred years, but rather 10,000 years. In November 2018, Martin doubled down on that statement, getting more explicit about which families and iconic locations you want to appear in the prequel. There's no King's Landing. There's no Iron, and there may be one other exception to the otherwise fresh start: the Night King, who commanded humanity's greatest threat, the White Walkers, until he was killed by Arya Stark during the final season's Battle of Winterfell. The Night King lived. The Night King was the first White Walker, and he and the other White Walkers were meant to defend the children of the forest from the rest of the First Men, who were invading Westeros at that time, Riley McAtee of The Ringer noted in June 2018. Obviously, McAtee also identified one other character who could appear in the prequel, albeit one who has only been discussed on Game of Thrones: Brandon the Builder, who founded House Stark and, according to legend, Westeros itself. Brandon Stark. HBO has revealed a large roster of actors who are set to appear in the pilot. At the top of that so far, the rest of the cast list contains names big and small, including Miranda Richardson, Rita Skeeter in Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, Jamie Campbell Bower Fantastic Beasts: The Crimes of Grindelwald, Georgie Henley The Chronicles of Narnia series, and Marquis Rodriguez Luke Cage, all in unspecified roles for now. HBO has only ordered a pilot of Blood Moon, or is it The Longest Night? So far. So it's far too early to even think about a possible release date. But given Game of
Raindrop, drop top, smoking, no cooking the hot pot. Fucking on your bitch, yeah, that. Looking up, open the park, pot.